tell you a little bit about the history of the Wilson's house at Dicky Beach. I met them through Joy de Grucci. Joy de Grucci had a business in Brisbane called Craftsman's Market, which was an interior design business, and my wife Sue worked for her. I also knew Graham because he was teaching at the University of Queensland, where I was a part-time tutor. And so they were the people who introduced me to Patrick and Pam Wilson. I also knew that they lived in a house that John Dalton had designed in Toowong. And so they hired me to do this house, and we came up here and looked at a piece of land at Dicky Beach. And I'm not certain whether they owned the land at that stage. But I do know that I procrastinated somewhat, and I was uncertain about what sort of a house to put on the land. I knew that it had to be a fairly inexpensive little beach house, and I wasn't sure, as a young architect, just how to go about that. But I recall that at that stage I had some cuttings from some American architectural magazines that were of beach houses on Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket Island, and I was very impressed with them. They were very basic houses with exposed stud framing on the inside and simple spaces. And Patrick and Pam came over to my house one night, and I showed them these photographs from this magazine, and I said to them, this is the kind of thing I'm thinking about, and how do you respond to this? They liked it because it was very basic and very straightforward and obviously fairly inexpensive to build. So that was really the influence that I had in terms of designing the house. In terms of the requirements for the house, I don't really imagine that in those days it was very complicated. I think a beach house just had to provide a few simple bedrooms and a space that was going to be used as a living room, dining room, kitchen area. And I came up straight away with the idea of a two-story house because the house was somewhat back from the beach, and we didn't want to disturb all the trees and nature that was in front of the house. So I thought if we made it a two-story box, then you'd get a two-storied space for the living room, dining room, kitchen, and you could appreciate the view from what was really a balcony above that upstairs looking across that space. And I think it was just really as straightforward and as simple as that. I then approached a builder in Brisbane who had done some other work for me, and I could remember his name as being Bill Tilden, and he came up here and he built the house, travelling backwards and forwards from Brisbane. And this was all in about 1968.
You did get to stay in the house and appreciate
Oh
it.
yes, that's the other thing. They became friends, and it was the true nature of a beach house, and as you said, it was almost like an alternative to having a tent and camping. It was just a basic shell, and they'd have weekend parties, and we'd come up here and we'd stay overnight, and we'd sleep on the seating in the living room, and often there'd be probably a dozen people staying in the house, and they had 3 small children. At that stage we had a small daughter, so it was really very young people having a nice time at the beach and camping out in this box. Right. So I have memories of Patrick at all. He was South African, and I think my memories are of him sitting with a nice big hat on the beach somewhere on a chair reading a book.
It's amazing when you go down there now and you compare it to the photos in Architecture Australia, that all that vegetation has become quite large trees now, whereas previously nothing was more than a metre above the ground.
That's right,
it's
yes.
Quite amazing how it's changed.
Yes, it was all like shrub in front of the house, if I remember. Like, it wasn't tall trees at all.
Yeah.
But I do remember that at that stage it wasn't fenced off from the beach, and to go surfing you walked out of their yard straight through onto the beach, and you didn't have to go up the side like you now do. There's a photograph of the house with a whole lot of children upstairs overlooking this balcony looking down into the living room, which tells me there must have been groups of people that were staying there at times.
Right.
And Richard Stringer, who was an architect and became an architectural photographer, he also knew the Wilsons, and so I think the times he stayed up there also, and he took the photographs that were then published of the house.
Right. And of course you've got the drawings still. They've survived all these years.
Yes, to my surprise. They're a bit brittle.
Yeah. Can we roll a couple out? And
Sure, yes. I think this is the most interesting one, is the more three-dimensional sort of drawing. And I think the section sort of tells the story of the house. That it's just this very simple shed roof building with some cubbyhole type bedrooms upstairs that are quite open and that are onto a balcony, and that overlooks a almost two-story living room, dining room sort of space. And then tucked underneath the bedroom is the kitchen and the bathroom, laundry on one side, and a very tight garage on the other side.
Yeah, so all the drama of the house is all about the volumes and
yes.
the simplicity and the view out to the beach of those double hung.
And it wasn't really what I'd call an indoor-outdoor sort of house in the way that houses now are, with this sense of the veranda. It really was a house where the veranda was, in point of fact, really the living room space when you opened up the double hung windows, because you could open it up in such a way that it really became like an outdoor room that opened straight out into the bush. There was no sort of outdoor terrace or outdoor living space. The living room itself was either an indoor or an outdoor space.
And there's not a square metre of wasted space in that place either, is
No,
there?
there's no corridors.
No.
No, you just come into an entrance and you just have a stairway that takes you straight upstairs.